they know how to warfare online. They're good at it. They're trained in it.
IPS is just sharing the truth.
Yeah, respect to the Infinite Plane Society.
The auto hoaxer revolution.
Auto hoaxer. Auto hoaxer.
The auto hoaxer revolution.
Auto hoaxer.
Okay, it's 8/27/2023. Infinite Plane Radio Live, open phones. Numbers on the screen, 1-505-349-0420. We're kind of picking up from where we left off earlier. We joined Fakeologist after a brief, maybe 30-minute conversation. We just kind of did an overview of the PSYOPs of the last 24 hours. And by the last 24 hours, I actually mean the last 48 hours, because every day we are inundated with 2 days worth of news. They pack 48 hours into every 24-hour news cycle by design, so you can never catch up, to keep you adrift. And we are here a raft in the sea of dis, mis, and malinformation. Free Mind War inoculation, your nightly booster. Just go to ips.monster. Feel free to share the stream. And we are now officially open phones. So if you call in, we can speak on any topic at all. Nothing is off limits. Okay, let's go ahead and start with this audio clip. This might be foreshadowing the next agenda.
I can't believe I sat through a school safety meeting today, and we went over alien invasion protocols, procedures. What to do if there's an alien invasion. Our county really gave us procedures for that. And honestly, I did not process anything that was said during that part of the presentation because I could not believe what I was looking at. Like, anybody else out there get alien invasion protocols? What to do with your students if there's an alien invasion? Just mine?
Alien invasion protocols. Alien invasion protocols. Are they going to start having alien invasion hyper-realistic school shooting drills? Or maybe it'd be similar. I mean, like hyper-realistic drills, but instead of a shooter with a bowl cut, you got aliens and tractor beams, staged kidnappings. And to really get the full effect, you'd probably want to actually kidnap the kids and throw them into some kind of simulation. But that's next. They're getting ready for the alien invasion. And if they're teaching it to the schools, then yes. Yeah, we're live, and if you caught us with Fakeologist, I would recommend going to his site and subscribing if you missed it. But if you caught us, we're going to cover a lot of the stuff we talked about and more. I will be posting a link to his site so you can listen to that if you missed it. So get on the newsletter, ips.monster or infiniteplane.live. And yes, phones are open. Okay, let's see here. I want to go ahead and give a little bit of time for everyone to show up. Some of the main topics: alien invasion protocols, a racist shooter in Jacksonville, Florida, Dollar General store. His name is Ryan Palmeter. They gave his name out. They gave his motivation. Apparently they already have his manifestos. It's like, well, that was quick. They already know why he did it, which memes, which meme pools are responsible for it. It's just so quick. Such a cheap psyop in terms of visual presentation. And I would say it's fitting that they did it in a Dollar General. It's like a dollar store psyop. Buffalo and Jacksonville, same weapon. They wrote all over the rifle with what looks to be liquid eraser or white paint, made swastikas. I'm surprised they faced them the right direction. And as pointed out in our Discord server by Umberto OG, the rifle looks just like the one out of Christchurch. And the blue gloves look like the ones from Kyle Rittenhouse's photo ops where he's posing with his weapon in blue gloves. So if you missed it, it's one of the things that happened. It came, it went. It's an influence operation. I don't know if there's going to be any marches for this. Like they'll do marches for individuals killed by cops, but when it's a mass shooting, you just have these vigils with candles. And I've always noted how they can use fake blood and fake tears to elicit real tears and real blood. You stage a psyop, have a few actors cry on camera, maybe some theatrical blood, maybe not, but the point of it is the next day you have all the mourners crying at the candlelight vigils, real tears. And along with it, you have the American Blood Services or whatever coming for the blood donations for the survivors. So you have real blood sacrifice, real tears, real emotion, real pathos, all out of a psychological operation. So it's like, even though they may not be killing people and traumatizing people for real, the end result is, yeah, they do get a bunch of blood. It is a big blood harvest. A loosh harvest, a blood harvest. Okay, let's go through. Speaking of loosh harvest, the arrest of Donald Trump has revived the Q movement, and they've taken a bit of comfort in his height and weight. 6'3", 215 pounds. Well, what is 6 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1 plus 5? Oh, it's 17, Q. It's a comm. And one of the comms, which is what they call these communications from Trump to them, one of the comms that struck me as just absolutely absurd, but this is where they're at, is the idea that Trump is somehow foreshadowing or hinting that they're about to arrest Joe Biden. And this so-called communication or comm is, I'm just going to have to show it to you if you're looking at the screen. They put together Joe Biden's face and Trump's face in the mugshot, and one of the major Q channels believes that it's deliberately trying to convey or foreshadow the arrest of Joe Biden based on this one person's observation that half the face looks like Joe Biden. Now, this is just reaching. Like they're saying, no, it's not really Trump being arrested, it's actually Biden in disguise. Here's what this is what the Q researcher said. His name is Doc Holliday, spelled with a Q. He said the left side of Trump's face on his mugshot looks like Biden. Interesting. Maria says, oh my God, it really does. Another commenter says, call me slow, but Trump's mugshot looks like half his face is Biden and half him. Is this a comm of who's really getting arrested? Like, this is just beyond bad hopium. This is mental. This is brain. This is mind killing material here. I mean, look, to look at Trump's mugshot and somehow think it's good news for everyone because Biden is getting arrested. This is what I mean when I say the theories are unfalsifiable. Nothing can prove them wrong. They can always just mess with reality. It's like, this reminds me of working on a puzzle as a kid, and some children didn't have the patience, and they just forced the pieces in. This is what they're doing to their reality, to their cognition. Hey, that doesn't fit my expectations. Let me go ahead and bend reality, bend the facts until they fit. We talk all the time about news benders in our news bent reality, but now we have people bending their own realities. This is stranger than the Mandela effect. I say that it's reality fluid at this point, and it's by design. So it doesn't matter how factual your statements are because they're against a backdrop of total and abject fiction, which shouldn't surprise any of us considering how much of our reality is in fact staged. And we've been talking quite a bit about the various indicators of the Donald Trump, of the Donald, that would be the representations of him in predictive programming. We're going back decades. You have indications that this Trump person is going to emerge. And here we are in our totally scripted reality. Phones are open if you want to call in. It is 505-349-0420. I've been getting into a lot of conversations about fake space on Twitter. I don't know if it's productive for them, but it is for me. I learn a lot from studying the belief structures how people come to believe in what they believe. And to me, it's endlessly intriguing because what I'm finding is that the religiosity, the piety, the self-righteousness that you would expect from people who are really high on religion is actually equally observable in people who are high on media. And media is a drug, but specifically high on scientism. Like the people who believe in moon landings, to me, are just the least objective of all. They're really holding fast to their faith and their faith in the consensus to maintain itself. But there's a desperation in it where I'm being ridiculed on Twitter for noticing patterns. And I have to ask them, are you forcing yourself to not see the patterns? Or, I mean, it's like 2 plus 2 is 5 with these individuals. And I'll give you an example. We've been talking about the Mach 33. Now, I didn't make this up, this thing with the Mach 33. But here's an image of the shuttle landing facility at the Kennedy spaceport, and it has a big 33 on it. And I was pointing out that it's said, at least according to the math, that it's 33 times the speed of sound is the escape velocity. And these are their terms, these are their descriptions. I'm not doing anything other than referencing it, and I'm saying it's interesting that you would associate Mach 33 with escaping the material realm, because in symbolism, 33, as we see it used, is consistently being associated with ascension from the material realm, from the flesh, from the earth, etc. So it's an interesting coincidence. But one commenter says, maybe it just indicates the direction the runway points. And others were like, and what? Joe Harris says, and what? And I'm saying, well, here's a pattern. And I'm not even talking about the esoteric connotations yet. But here's an example. The U.S. government reimbursed Buzz Aldrin $33 for his trip to the moon in '69. On the surface of the Earth, the escape velocity is 11.2 kilometers per second, or 33 times the speed of sound, Mach 33, and several times the muzzle velocity of a bullet. So if you have a problem with my assessment here, it's Wikipedia you have to correct, not me. SpaceX conducts epic 33-engine Starship test. All 33 engines ignite. So Joel Harris says, why not spend time looking at the numbers that do not match? Well, I'm only pointing at the ones that make the headlines. I'm looking at easily observed patterns. And this person says, boy, you're messed up with the numbers. Is it me? Or is it them? I'm not the one encoding these events. But going on here, the globe defenders, the fanatics, they pretty much just say there's something wrong with you, your IQ's 33, etc. And I'm like, again, it's not me. Here's a very popular watch that was kickstarted. It's the Mach 33 collection, and according to them, it's the speed required to overcome the gravity itself on Earth. So again, they resort to ad hominem attacks when I'm just pointing out their stuff. And these are not patterns that I've put into this. You're gonna say that I'm just noticing irrelevant details when there's a 42 encoded into every other thing Elon Musk does. He's consciously and deliberately doing so with the 420, the 42, the 42,000 CubeSats, as we discuss all this time. But they're coming into the conversation from a place of pure ignorance. And they see my pattern recognition as some kind of a flaw or a fault or some kind of a mental illness. And I'm like, well, that's fine if you want to, debate the facts, but attacking me personally isn't going to get you very far. But it's very typical of believers. When confronted with facts that contradict their beliefs or undermine them, all they can do is burn the heretic. And it goes beyond just the numbers. It happens to be archetypes. We often talk about the angry God and the flood, and the angry globe and the flood, Noah, Noah, dove, dove. It's a one-for-one template match. That's all. And I was just scratching the surface. And you're going to say, there's no pattern, and I'm showing a pattern. And I'm only showing us a fraction of it. Wait until you see the big picture, or at least what we've managed to extrapolate. So this one individual decides to, and I welcome the challenge. I want these claims to be challenged. So this one individual says, okay, well, prove to me there's a pattern. Kennedy Space Center, 42 landings on runway 33. Well, I didn't know that. He says, go find a pattern there, Tim. Very snarky. Leonard Van Den Boonstoop, industrial design engineer, supposedly. So I'm like, well, 42 landings on strip 33, there does happen to be significance here. Again, it connects to SpaceX and Elon Musk's clever use of the number 42. Esoterically, 33 is about ascension to the celestial. 42 is about descent into matter. So it makes perfect sense that landing 33 would have 42 landings associated with it. They just throw it out there as though I'm just somehow been like, oh, I'm stumped. No, it's not like that. It's worse than they think. But their frame of reference is wrong, because their frame of reference is, oh, I saw it on the screen, therefore it's real. And a lot of these individuals would be confused at the sight of a piece of salami stuck on the screen with stars in the background. They would say, that's so beautiful. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And I'd be like, I'm sorry, but that's just a piece of salami. But they would totally fall for it. Like if you have any scientist friends or astronomers, and you think that they're way above you because they believe in these visions, that they believe these things are objectively real because they're shown these things by NASA, ask them about the space salami. Or rather, show it to them first. Show them the space chorizo. And say, hey, what do you think of this? Do you think it's beautiful? And their jaws will drop. Their eyes will well up with tears. And they will say, science has shown us, has blessed us with this miraculous image. This is so beautiful. And you would say, well, look, this is actually a space chorizo. If you go to space.com, you can read about this. Top scientist admits the space telescope image was actually a slice of chorizo. He claimed it was an image of a distant star. They used a $10 billion telescope. And all kinds of people fell for it. And I'm saying, all your friends are going to fall for it. All the believers in moon landings are going to fall for this. And they're going to say that I am somehow flawed for noticing these patterns. Yeah, there's a pattern of fakery. That's the pattern. You spent $10 billion for this. But I'm also pointing out they have no cognitive defense against this. This is the philosophical crisis I often talk about. The fact that people fall for stuff like fake pandas. You shouldn't be able, well, here's the thing. A lot of people know pandas are real, but they don't know how to immediately refute it. You shouldn't even have to accept it as plausible. You should be able to say, well, Hitchens' razor. That which is asserted without evidence can be refuted and dismissed without evidence. I don't need to provide counter evidence. Your claim is so absurd and goes so far against the recognized status quo that if you don't bring any evidence, we can just ignore you as a quack, as a kook. But that never happens. Instead, people are like, wait, this guy says pandas aren't real. How do I argue against it? Well, you haven't been given the cognitive tools, or you've been conditioned not to use them. You're meant to be a blank, you're meant to be just more or less vacuous, but your mind's meant to be a blank canvas for them to put anything on. You're not meant to curate your own thoughts. That's why I say the public has no mental immune system. Maids, or mind aids. Okay, let's see, going into the comments. Into the Break says, I have a cool guy Tim friend and don't capitulate to folly now. No, I will not be capitulating to folly. And one thing I won't do is I won't back off of topics just because the public has been convinced that there's nothing there. In fact, I tend to double down. There are many attempts to sabotage discourse over topics like the topic of NASA's penchant for fakery. And, you can criticize NASA without making definitive statements about cosmography, things you can't know. And you don't have to mix your beliefs with what you know. I always said from the very beginning, You don't need to bring a Bible to a conversation about climate change. If somebody brought a Bible to the conversation and said, look, you got to believe in climate change. It says right here in Genesis that God will flood us if we don't cut our sin, which meant carbon footprint. Like, you don't see people using the Bible to argue for climate change. Why would you bring the Bible to a conversation about geography? And what they did is they took a conversation that should have been about objective reality and turned it into an argument that's more religious and philosophical, based on traditional views versus progressive views. They totally destroyed the conversation, but they never really addressed the questions it raised. And I never let that distraction that they set up of the movement being discredited distract me from the questions that were raised. Donna South says, why chorizo? Why not bologna? Must be a texture thing. It does look believable. And if you look back, though, you don't. This is the main point. This is what I think that needs to be pointed out. The reason why they fell for it, and the reason why none of your flat Earth friends fell for it, is because they learned that you don't just believe whatever you're shown on a screen from NASA. The reason why this, quote, scientific-minded people fell for it is they believe that science is about trusting the experts. Well, trust and faith shouldn't have anything to do with media or science, but they do now. And that's because media and science are actually a new religion. Sean Dexter says, my daughter watched a rocket launch and asked loudly, why is it going that way? The local scientist said it's the curve. That's hilarious. Like, you could see the curve. The clouds are flat. They say that it's the gravity tilt, that it's falling into orbit. That's their official explanation. But I can show you a video right now. I earmarked this on my Twitter account, that purports to show a rocket blasting vertically into space. The problem with it is, you're looking at it from space and you can see it leave the Earth and go into space. The problem is that the same rocket, as seen from the ground, does the gravity tilt. It arcs. So how do you reconcile that? From the ground, this thing is arcing out of sight, but from space, it's going straight up. These are two different things. And then when they say video from the space station, it tends to look like video game. So here's a rocket launch as seen from the International Space Station. If you're looking on the screen, I'll enlarge it for you. Now there's the rocket going up, and now it's hitting that yellow line, which apparently separates Earth from space. So you know where the atmosphere reaches the vacuum of space? Yeah, there's a yellow line right there. Doesn't look like CGI at all. There it explodes. Now a couple other things I want to point out. The dark side of the Earth is lit. You can see stars. I mean, not stars, cities. As bright as stars. But when you look at the Starman car in space, the dark side of the Earth is pitch black. Like, everybody on that side of the planet turned their lights off at the same time. Like, why is it so pitch black on the other side? But from the ISS, it's always lit like Christmas. So the Earth looks like a Christmas tree at night if you're 200 miles away. But you get a few thousand miles away and it's pitch black. Don't know how that works. But again, if you're looking at the screen, it's a rocket launch as seen from the ISS. This is supposedly video. Look, if you think this is video, you are reality impaired. You're visually illiterate, and you can't tell the difference between real and fake. I mean, that is a sad state of being right there. You're cognitively impaired. You're lost. You will need direction. You will need pundits and experts and influencers to guide you because you're lost. You have the wool sack over your head. This is the new hoodwinking. You've been hoodwinked, disconnected from direct perception, and your whole worldview, your literal worldview, your view of the world has been filtered through really bad CGI. You live in a video game. Portal Complex says looks like Beta Max. Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's terrible. But my point is, you see the rocket go from the ground to space, straight up, vertical, perpendicular. From the ground, and you can look at the same rocket launch, I cross-reference it, it arches over as they normally do. All right, let's go ahead and have a throwback. This is unscripted, unpaid witness on 9/11. Here's some rare news footage.
Bomb in another building, not second plane.
A bomb in the building, not a second plane. Wait a minute, sir. Where did you get your information? Eyeballs don't count. If it didn't come from CNN, Fox, if it didn't come from any of the approved networks, it doesn't actually count. We only count false witness here in this world. Only bearers of false witness. Real witnesses, yeah, you're actually committing hate crimes.
Bomb in another building, not second plane. That's a bomb. We say the second plane.
That's what we're told. The second plane. We saw it on television.
Everything.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Did you see what happened? What happened?
Well, I was in the past train, and there was a huge explosion sound. Everyone came out. A large section of the building is blown out, around like the 80th floor.
Was it hit by something, or was it something inside?
It was inside. Because it looked out. Everything was coming out. All the windows were coming out. All the papers were
What is on the sidewalk?
I didn't see anything.
Was there any people hurt, do you know?
I just ran, and everyone in the past train just ran. I don't know if anyone was hurt, but I assume they were because the windows were all blown out.
Okay, there we have it. Just a little throwback. Quite a lot of fake space stuff in my feed today. But when we say space, really I want to point out too that the goal of NASA, the purpose of NASA is worldview warfare, which is controlling your inner space. 212816 says, have a good night. Yeah, thank you for joining. And if you want to catch the replay, just go to ips.monster and I'll send it out via email. P. Trippa says, wow. Yeah, that would be a non-canonical verse. They're constructing a new Bible out of media. And instead of it being the all-seeing eye of God, it's the all-seeing camera lens. And only the camera lens of Big Brother counts. Only what he sees, what he approves of, gets into the final version. And their final version is the scripted, curated, made-for-TV version. All of this extraneous footage never makes it to the cutting room floor because it would contradict it. They have to get rid of individual witnesses. So that answers a question. There's a lot of people that saw it, yeah, but they didn't all get voices. Salty Siren says, iCamera, which is a perfect anagram for America, which is really a construct of what? With Infinite Plane Radio.
This is Harmon. How you doing?
Hey, Harmon, what's up? How are you doing today?
I just turned on and saw you were live. You're talking about some space stuff. So I was going to say, the people who say they see the Starlink in the sky, it goes over and stuff. Have you seen that yet?
A lot of people claim they've seen the Starlink convoy. I have seen some videos, but the problem I always have with it is these videos are late at night where they couldn't possibly be reflecting the sun because they're a low Earth orbit. So I just assume that these things are perhaps as a way of convincing the public they fly some balloons over, but it's not like it's a consistent thing. You can't just go out and see it any night. No way.
No, I've seen it 3 times now.
You've seen the Starlink? What time of day?
Between 9:10 and 9:18 at night. I did time hacks when I saw it. Once out here in Arizona, where I'm at, Arizona-Nevada border, and then I spent a week over in San Clemente, California, at the National Park, San Onofre Park, and it came out at 9:18 the first night, right above our heads. It couldn't be more than maybe 2 miles above your head at the most.
Yeah, let me point this out. Because one, if it's above your head, what does that mean at night? Like there's stars behind it, it's above your head. That means it's in the shadow of the Earth.
Well, I'm not worried about that. I know that. I'm just trying to tell you I saw it and what it's so weird. They look like squares connected to each other, and like a train almost. and in the middle of the square is there's a light or something. But the thing is, all 3 times I've seen it, it only comes on for like 8 seconds. It appears, and I'm the only guy who believes in that stuff. All the people in the swimming pool the first night, they looked up and saw it, and they go, "Oh, that's Starlink. We saw that in San Diego one time." I go, "Dude, that's like 2 miles above your head at the most. It's so close." But they're programmed to say that. And then the other 2 times I saw it in San Clemente, and
Did you take
it's
pictures?
really close.
Did you take pictures or
No,
video?
you don't have time. I'm telling you, you don't have time. It's on for 8 seconds at the longest,
See, that doesn't make sense
and
to
it just
me.
goes away.
They had it come over here, right? They said, "Oh, Starlink's coming over here, and it's going to be passing over for," I think they said 11 minutes.
I've heard that too.
And it's like, wait a
But
minute. If it's going 17K in low Earth orbit and you can see it for 11 minutes, or yeah, here it's just like, or for however long, few minutes, you have to think about it. How much ground is it covering to be able to go around the entire planet in 90 minutes? Just no way.
dude, it's not even going that fast. I'm telling you, it like turns on, goes about 8, I'll give it 10, and I wouldn't even give it 10, and it just turns off. It's not like it fades out of the way. It was just, we've seen it coming to, every one of them's been coming from the west, going kind of east. And it was coming from us for about 7 or 8 seconds, got almost past us, and it just turned off. Just turned off. And it did the same thing in San Clemente. It just, everybody's going, oh, because the campground's all looking at it, right? And they're going, where'd it go? Where'd it go? And of course, I've already seen it. I said, it don't stay on long. It only stays on like 8 to 10 seconds. And it just turns off and just goes. It's not like it went out of sight. The light just goes off.
But you realize that it wouldn't be possible to view these things at night if it's right above your head, just because the shadow of the Earth goes out 875,000 miles. It's like, what's the light source?
Right. It's got to be a hologram. That's all I'm thinking. Some kind of. That's all I can think it could be. I mean, it was pretty bright, and it's big. It's not like small, like a. You couldn't see the ISS anyway. I know that, but it's small. It's not small.
The Starlinks these are bright lights, you're saying?
Yeah, the Starlink itself isn't small. It's pretty. You could see a good size of it.
Could you see? You said shape. Could you see them as like squares or their shape? You mentioned.
Yeah, they're like connected. They're connected like it would be a snake or something like that. And you can't see what's connecting them, but you can see a little space in between each square, and it just turns off, just goes away.
Because they're not physically connected. There's no kind of cable between them, but they're in low Earth orbit.
No,
You've seen them. That's fascinating. It's fascinating that you saw something. Now, what makes you think you saw Starlinks? What makes you think it wasn't just?
Oh, I didn't think that. All the other people did.
It could have been aliens. I mean, we could be getting invaded right now, and everyone just writes it off as Starlink.
Yeah, but it didn't look like craft at all. It looked like just lights, to tell you the truth. I didn't think, well, that looks like something physical. And even the people didn't think it was something physical, and that had to think that. And remember, you only got like 8 seconds to absorb that. And the second night in San Clemente, it came pretty much over our head. So I said, okay, that's 2 times I've seen it, and it's come out between 9:10 and 9:18 at night. So I went out about 9:05, and I'm looking for it. And this time it was probably, I'm like a quarter of a mile from the beach. It was out over the beach, but going in the same direction it came over my head the night before.
Well, listen to this. The satellites have an average visibility through the weekend, with each passing being 5 or 6 minutes. Or another one here says actual times may vary. But my point of it is, how come whenever the news advertises it, they say you have 5 minutes, and you're saying 8 seconds?
For the thing that they call the Starlink, it might be something even different. Have
But
you
I
ever
mean,
looked it up on the
what I mean
computer? I
is,
never did.
if you saw a convoy of lights and it was Starlink, it would have been 5 minutes. That's why I asked if you took a picture. It wouldn't just be 8 seconds.
Yeah. Well, I've seen that same thing 3 times now. One here in Arizona and Nevada border, and then twice over there in San Clemente. And of course, I haven't gone outside again,
By
and
the
I'm
border,
clear sky like you are.
it could be drug
Huh?
drones. It could be drug drones. It could just be cocaine being delivered by drone over the
No,
border.
no, no. It's lights. It's just freaking lights. I mean, it's going smooth. It's nothing interrupting it. No patterns, no noise, no nothing. But why would I see it in San Diego area and see it over here in Arizona also?
Yeah, I would have to cross-reference it. For the time being, I'm classifying this as UFO. You can't call it Starlink until you can correlate it with their actual site tracking. It could be a number of things, but this is the thing. They tell people that the ISS is up there. And now people who are predisposed to believe in it will see any light as the ISS. They throw it into the realm of possibility. And like you pointed out with the witnesses around you, they just assume, okay, it's real because of this one sighting, because they're told how to classify it. When at any other time they might have said, oh, it's a UFO.
I'm looking at it on the computer right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 lights in a row. They go straight. Like that's the same thing we saw straight, but it was a lot lower. I'm telling you. And I had a pilot there with me. He's 64 years old, and he had flown for 40 years almost. And he looked up there, and everybody else saying it's a long way. He said, "No, that wasn't more than 2 miles in the air." That's where I got my reference from.
Interesting. Well, he would know.
And
They also say that you can only see them an hour after sunset. So you're saying it's like 9 at night, 10 at night. It would have to be something else.
no,
I
at
don't know what.
9:18. No, because that it was that late. You know, it didn't get dark till 8:40.
I see. Okay, interesting. Well, you've witnessed some unidentified flying objects, and a pilot there said those are not in space, so you can't say these were satellites, but you did see some lights in the sky. Could be drug drones, could be any number of things, but we can rule out space.
Oh, definitely. You know what? I'm gonna quit being lazy and get off my fat ass and go sit out there. You know, I live out in the wide open desert where I think you have. I think you have a lot of trees where you're at. You don't have as much visibility, I don't think.
We don't have that many
You
trees
know,
here.
as in,
Not that many. It's New
you know.
Mexico. It's shrubs, but
I know. I thought you were northern New Mexico. Northern New Mexico has tons of fruit trees.
I also want to point out too, because this is how bias works. People say, "Oh, I believe in space. I've seen satellites with my own eyes." People think they are eyewitnesses to spacecraft. The fact of it
I know.
is,
I know.
okay, this is all spacecraft in low Earth orbit would require the sunlight. You couldn't see it at night. And moreover,
Right.
satellites aren't lit by themselves. In other words,
Right. They have no power system.
and if they're high enough out there to where they're not in the Earth's shadow, they're not going to move fast enough for you to even see them. So nobody here is an eyewitness to a satellite. You can go and just stop with that.
Yeah, I've always done that. When I played my golf league at night, and it was like we'd sit there till nighttime just drinking stuff, and the guy go, "Oh, there's a satellite going right there," and I go, "Dude, you can't see a satellite. Even if there was one, you couldn't see it." Well, what was it then? I don't know. I say.
Yeah, well,
You know,
commercial
of course, what do you
aircraft,
say? We don't know.
drone, or balloon. Well, what you can do is you can assume man-made craft. Here's
Right.
the error that people make is I don't know what it is. I'm going to assume it's whatever fits my fancy, whether it's Bigfoot on a unicorn, a flying saucer, or JFK Jr. coming with the Pleiadians to come save us from the deep state. Or angels or aliens. People just project into the unknown whatever they can identify if they're not forming their opinions with a rational basis, like I tend to do. And I'm like for example, you hear hoofbeats outside your house. You can assume it's a horse before it's zebra, right? You wouldn't immediately reach to zebra.
Right. And then the zebras escaped from the zoo and it just happened to be they were running through your area, right?
I mean, it's possible,
But you
but
assume they're horses.
right, right, exactly. So
No,
before you
I said,
reach
but
to
you
the
assume that.
supernatural,
I was going along with your story.
and I'm saying,
I was going along for your
yeah, what I'm
story.
saying is about you wouldn't assume the supernatural before first exhausting all the natural explanations. And I'm saying that as of right
Right.
now, satellites, orbiting satellites, ISS, CubeSats, space junk, all of that is supernatural until you can prove otherwise. All we can explain are, I mean, all we can say about the lights in the skies, it's got to be something that we know, that can actually do what that light is doing. So it can be an airplane, sure. A drone, possibly. Why would a drone have a light on it? I don't know. A plane would have, maybe for identification from the ground or from
These
other
things were
craft.
all lit up. You could see the whole square. You could see another light in the middle, and it was like flat. It's not like it had any dimension to it or nothing. And it's just as clear as day when you see it and close.
Now, one more
So
thing.
whatever I'm seeing, I don't know what it is.
One more thing I want to point out, because I think I had an effect on this. No one was pointing out this discrepancy with the Starlinks, with where all kinds of videos were showing up that looked fake. But then I started pointing out, hey, a lot of these sightings have to be fake because of the time of day. And immediately after I started talking about how these sightings could be falsified, SpaceX started adding, quote, sun visors. They said, oh yeah, the Starlinks are ruining the night skies for astronomers, so now we're going to put sun visors on them. So now they claim that they have sun visors. I'm like, wait a minute, so the ones that are already up there, you're going to what, go up there and put a visor on it? How does that work? So you can look it up. It's called visor sats. And I think they made up visor sats because their constant Starlink sightings were not tenable. They were totally debunkable.
Well, all these pictures I'm looking at on the computer right now, because what they're supposed to be, to me, they look all CGI. Every one of them looks CGI to me. You know, and they don't look even close. They don't even look close to what I saw, and not close at all as far as distance either. These look
Now
like small lights way out in the sky.
can you prove that what you saw, or is it even a fair assumption that what you saw was somehow meant to be viewed by people on the ground as Starlink? Like, do you think it was a Starlink psyop?
Oh, definitely has to be that. But you know what? I'm gonna be digital. I'm gonna go out there. I'm gonna go out there right now since I hang up, and because I got wide open. I mean, we only got one stoplight in my town, so it doesn't. I just go out there, sit there, and I know the direction it came from 3 times. So I'm gonna sit there and look for it for a certain direction, and hopefully have my camera ready. I mean, it takes 2 or 3 seconds to start filming, you know, and if it's only on for 8 to 10 seconds, hopefully I can get a view of
Well,
it.
according to their own website, you have 5 or 6 minutes. So whatever you saw that day
I know.
was a UFO. It was drones delivering drugs. Whatever it wasn't satellites. And your pilot friend said it was 2 miles up. So you could go ahead and rule that one out as a sighting of a Starlink, I imagine.
Well, and it's no way it could be drones either. What it was, I mean, I just don't see it. Yeah, you know what? I just have to get the video. Hopefully, I can get it within. If it comes over, it's clear skies here all the time. So I'm gonna go try it, see what I can do, and
That's
then
good.
hopefully I just send it to you, and you'll be the
And
first one that has it.
okay, that's really good. Yeah, because this is what we want. You know, we want to get facts to drive all of our conclusions. And right now, a lot of people make assumptions based on their cognitive bias and based on um, guesses, more or less. But it's like, we have to be real about this. If you're gonna, if we're gonna prove it one way or the other, we need more sightings. We need more ISS transits, and nobody's doing it. So many people told me, I'm gonna go photograph the ISS for you, and the best I get is like they photograph an airplane. I'm like, come on, you can do better.
Yeah, that one Jaron did that one time. Remember that? A few
Yeah.
years back, like in
Well,
2017 or something. He
J-
didn't know what it was.
look, Jaren's getting paid under the table by NASA.
You think so? I
Yeah,
don't know. I mean,
there's no other
it's
explanation.
possible. I mean,
Well, hey, I got another call coming in, Harmon. Thank you for calling, and have a great evening.
and I'll try getting that picture for you.
Yes, stay in touch. Okay. Infinite Plane Radio. Okay, I don't know if we caught that one. If you want to try calling right back. Yeah, look, the reason why I say that what's his name works for NASA is that you wouldn't be doing ISS transits with the same insert shot that they use. They're all using the same technique for faking it, unless you were being paid by them, which is what I think. Now, when it comes to Starlink satellites and all these things, it's a fascinating subject here because it's easy to just say, well, I saw some lights, it could be this, it could be that, but we have to have better information. Like, correlate this sighting with the actual app. Pippi Longstreth says that sound, LOL. Yeah, that's the Skype ringer. I'm usually better at silencing that thing. But yes, the ISS transits are all faked by agents because if it was real, you wouldn't have to do it in front of the moon. Why do you only have like, oh, I want to show people the ISS, but let me wait until it crosses in front of the moon. Let me wait until it crosses in front of the sun. Why? Explain why. Because by doing so, you eliminate the eyewitness. If you're waiting for it to pass in front of the moon, then you're trying to record it at night when you can't see it. You're hoping to catch the silhouette, which is what Jeranism has done. Then they do the solar one. Well, if it's in front of the sun, you can't see it because your eyes. So you have to use a solar filter. In both instances, there are no eyewitnesses. So show me eyewitnesses. Show me an eyewitness to the ISS. And the best you can get are these, I saw lights in the sky. It's like saying I saw UFOs. It's not precise. Then they say, I matched it with the app. Well, show me the app and show me the light in the sky at the same time with you in the shot. And it has not been done. And I'm telling you, if it was doable, it would have been done. It's a magic trick. Sleight of mind. If it was possible to prove the ISS was real as an eyewitness recording it from the ground, you could do it right now. Anybody would do it. And they always say, oh, anybody can do it. Just go do it. McToon, he says to me, you can just go outside with the app and record the ISS, right? And I'm like, well, have you ever done it? And he's like, no. So you're telling me that I can accept the burden of proof for your extraordinary claim. I can do the work and I can go see it, but you've never done it? That'd be the same thing as me saying, oh, you don't believe in Bigfoot? Go out in the woods. Then come see me. Like, I'm sorry, that's not how it works. The person with the extraordinary claim needs to do some homework, and they never do. And I have not met one ISS believer who has a picture of it. And the reason why it matters is it allows somebody to claim to be an eyewitness to orbit. If you can witness orbit with your eyes, you're an eyewitness of the ballage of the Earth. Now you have evidence with your own eyes that you're on a ball. It's a bigger deal than the moon landing that you believe in the ISS, even if you just believe in it in a half-assed way, because it's the built-in assumption. Like a lot of people still have built into their worldview orbiting satellites, ICBMs, spy satellites, Chinese space lasers from satellites. I don't have that. I don't think of orbiting satellites as actually being a thing. Sounds like a terrible idea anyway. Balloons make a lot more sense. Pete Drip at 103 says, Tim, Burning Man Festival starts today. Might be a good breakdown. Oh, yeah. And they arrested the Navy SEAL who killed Osama bin Laden for public intoxication. Today's the anniversary of Burning Man. It's the anniversary of, on the first year they canceled Burning Man because COVID. It's the anniversary of Kanye West setting himself on fire. Same day, he did his own Burning Man. It happened in, they generally hold them in Black Rock City, Nevada. We'll have to do a whole piece on the Burning Man symbol and how it represents the same thing as Christ, as the phoenix. And I would even say that the Burning Man Festival is pretty much just the left-wing version of the Bohemian Grove. And even now as we speak, Bohemian Grove is probably happening. There's probably a bunch of naked Republicans running around in the woods right now. Infinite Plane Radio.
Speaking of naked Republicans running around in the woods at the what would we call it? The club, the club that most people aren't privy to or invited to, the Bohemian Grove Club, and we just had a son of the president who is the comedian of the Bohemian Grove just ironically do the second act of his comedic act at the same place as where another previous comedic act was taken part in.
I hadn't
So,
heard about this. I mean, I know there's that comedian Bill
yeah,
Hicks that broke into the
so
Bohemian Grove. Is that
no. Stockton Rush was the Bohemian Grove comedian when everybody was naked in their Bohemian Grove outfits. He was telling jokes, apparently, as the story
interesting?
goes. As the story goes. And then, so he was quoted as saying he prided himself on never telling the same joke twice. Yet, here he is, and we have this joke of an incident that happened of his collapse of a vessel where he was uncharacteristically of a engineer, but very characteristic of a narcissist captain. He goes and fails again. So then it becomes ironic that he said he would never tell the same joke twice, and his final demise was telling the joke for the second time. And there must be something in that we must have knowledge of, right? There must be something within the humor of this lie that they propagate to people. You must be able to attain something from that.
Yeah, I
And I
happen to
would
agree.
say,
I agree.
what do you think?
I'll have to dig into it a bit more, but I think there's something cryptic in it for sure. Everything is like that, and everything does have a element of irony. In all these psyops, one thing is never absent, and it's irony. There's always a sense of humor that is obviously evident from the perspective of those writing it, but if you're emoting and you're reacting to it, you wouldn't see the humor in it. But
Yeah,
that's
it's not
typical.
ironic when you're crying, right?
Exactly. Like
It's
you're
only ironic when the tears go away, then the irony becomes apparent.
right. And of course, the laughter at the comedic value of it would be seen as inappropriate to the people who take it very seriously. Like on January 6th, you had Roseanne Boylan being trampled to death, and she's carrying a "Don't Tread on Me" flag. Like, to me, that was an obvious joke from the scriptwriters. But from the perspective of the MAGA, one of their own got trampled. They don't see the irony in the
Well,
story
yeah,
there.
Ashley Rabbit, Follow the White Rabbit, peeked its head up over the hole and got shot in the face.
Oh,
With
nice.
take away from that what you want to take away from that. That's what happened, right? Very clear message is being sent.
And speaking of, by the way, I'm going to be talking to Woo's News in a couple of days. And he did a great breakdown of the Ashley Babbitt psyop. And you're right, she pokes her head through the hole in the plastic. It's not even real glass. And
Mm-hmm.
and the gun's not even aiming at her. And she falls on her massive backpack that looks like it has sleeping bags in it. I mean, the thing is so padded.
Well, she was held up by Twinkle Toes Johnny Sullivan, the Olympian ice skater.
Hmm.
The Olympian ice skater turned Antifa was the guy, and he also was filmed, saying we're going into this, and like clearly he's Antifa, and then he was wearing MAGA
Oh,
outfit
yes.
and garb.
Yes, double agents. They
And
switch their
so that's
hats. Yep.
Johnny Sullivan. Johnny Sullivan, he is an Olympian ice skater, Antifa, Olympian ice skater turned Antifa. Because what happens when you go into the woke cult? Then all your hopes and dreams get put to the wayside. And so he's not an Olympian anymore, but he was, and he was the one that held the white rabbit up out of the hole she was in,
I see.
just in time for her to get got. Very, very nice tale. Like, they're telling a tale with all of this, and then she's just a mom, and
And
now
then
her kids have to not have a mother now because of Twinkle Toes, a former Olympian, wanted to pretend like he was a MAGA supporter. He wanted to pretend, and he held this woman up, but no,
now
nobody
the
cares
name though,
about the shooter
the name
or the
Babbitt.
man who's holding her up.
The name Babbitt, I've seen pointed out that you could relate it to Sinclair Lewis's book Babbitt, about
Mm-hmm.
ultra-conformists who are responding to changes in society. And here she is, literally wrapped in an American flag, and she's trying to defend MAGA, which is basically the anti-progressivism. It's this return to this old way. So she's literally like a Babbitt from the book, someone you describe as a Babbitt.
Precisely. So precisely. How is that an accident? Like, how is it an accident that Babbitt, White Rabbit, and linked to that book is just so cohesively coexisting in the same frame of reference?
You know what? I'm going to bring this up with Woo's News. I want to talk about the names because he's done a breakdown of the psyop frame by frame, second by second, angle by angle. But I want to get into the names because I think one of the things that discredits stories, even or news events, before you even figure out how they faked it, as far as movie magic, is the narrative. And if there's a strong narrative structure with names and jokes, double entendres, etc., it goes beyond the realm of coincidence. At that point, you're looking at structure, and that's one of the things I want to talk about with Woo's News
Mm.
is the
Yeah, like,
structure.
that especially recently happened with the Hawaiian incident. It's like, are you trolling or like what's going on? Because like this shouldn't be where my conspiracy theory is just mainstream news. Like, oh yeah, you should have painted your house blue. Like, that shouldn't be just mainstream news. Like, there's a reason why they can't keep the news stories subverted anymore. Like, people are observant. People aren't as dumb. That's why it's like I kind of think the least for most people, and it's like, this is artificial intelligence and you're artificial intelligence. But ultimately, the more that I see, I am actually given hope that people aren't as dumb as you would think that Obama's No Child Left Behind education system would make. And I get most people fall within that, but there is outliers of very intellectual people that are here, like you, like me, like Salty, like Lickety, like Lean Dion, like people in the chat, and Nama. These people in the chat, like, we are fed up with lies. We don't like it.
Well, I don't think that there's any chance though that there's going to be any quote mass awakening because what's happening is we're looking at believers choosing between various scenarios to believe in. And I think the problem here is the problem of belief itself. And I think that the answer here is to go beyond being a believer and then change to having from a belief system to an operating system, where instead of just believing, you have a system of processing information first. But to me, this is a philosophical crisis that has been deliberately engineered. And the only way out of it is at the level of the individual. I don't see it as being something that can be conveyed to the masses. Like, you don't see mass apostasies. It's not like I mean, you do see a lot of people leaving traditional religions, but they're just moving into a new belief system, which is mainstream media.
Yeah, precisely, concisely. That's exactly what the problem is people will be, okay, I don't know the answers, and I will relinquish, because they're lazy, their own freedom of thought to what ChatGPT will tell them. And so the problem isn't that people aren't thinking. The problem is, what are people thinking? And there's so much wasted potential in people thinking absurd things like the Earth is a globe. Like, it's so absurd. Like, this is what is done in reality is we build level, we fly level, we navigate level. There's so much is done in reality, and then for you to be redundant in saying, oh, well, actually, no, that reality is relative and subjective, and then
Well, the
now we
contrarian,
don't know
look,
what
a
genders
contrarian has
are.
no value to like mainstreamers. If you're going to come out and say, "Hey, everything you know is wrong," it's not gonna sink in because the blue-pilled existence is a dream world, and it's very comfortable. It's self-affirming. It's actually it's as nice and comforting as any of these sitcoms at night where they have their little lives, they have a little problem, and they resolve it at the end of each episode. Go to sleep easy. Like the dream world is really not the place to go for converts. They're too happy and complacent, and there's no reason to break that spell. I don't think. Why would they want to break their spell?
That's that's sort of the Mickey. That's the slip they give you when you're born. They give you the Mickey, right? So you're in amnesia, and they're like, oh yeah, yeah, just do as we tell you. Don't think about it. That's the slip they give you.
But
It
look,
doesn't have to be rational. We're going to be undertaking. We're going to be coming to these conclusions in a frame of reference in logic to argue anything. But then, oh yeah, negate logic, dismiss logic, without actually coming up with a new framework of logic to have your argument within.
do you think that, as I do, I tend to agree with certain writers on this topic that the reason why we see what we see in terms of mass media as more or less psyop entertainment complex, do you think it's because the masses need some type of coercive, manipulative control like religion? Like, do you think there might be some benevolence behind the Psy War, or do you think it's entirely
Oh
evil?
well, that's like two questions. So I do think that they would need it, but I would say who is the they, and the they is formed by a reconciliation of who is thyself. So if thyself is giving you orders, you can you can sort of give yourself the authority to give orders,
No, I'm talking about government.
and so
If
that
govern
is
if all the governments of the world collude in using media to create contemporary myths to control the mass mind, do you think that it's intrinsically an evil operation, or do you think it's for our own good because human beings are unruly in big numbers? Because that's their
yeah,
take.
I would say it would be a timed act. Yes. So yes, affirmative. I think the Illuminati is good,
Because I remember listening
and I
to
think that people given to their idle ways would only create chaos within the system. And
right.
so we need the Illuminati to come and give order to that system, knowing full and well there's a lot of retards.
Okay, because this was the
And
premise.
you yourself being elevated at the tip of the beak, you yourself being of this 1% echelon, will be completely fine. You will know not to fall for certain tricks, but a lot of people need to be told. And you it's not a provision that's hindering you or me or anybody here in this chat, because this is an advanced class, right? And so the Illuminati isn't something bad to me or you. The Illuminati is to hold back the really low intellectual level, simple-minded retards out there. That's what it is. Like, hey, and they're given rules, and they can abide by them or not, you know. And it's not like that we sort of don't abide by these rules. We do abide by these rules. We understand the rules.
Well,
And we are
yes.
on the escalated
Okay.
plane above what the masses who are upset about, said political things.
Well, this concept is not new at all. And there's that Greek historian who talked about it, that the masses, the multitudes are fickle, unreasoned passion, violent anger, and they need to be held in check by pageantry, by the terrors of gods, is what they said. And so I'm thinking,
True.
in today's modern world, they managed to basically keep us in a state of suspended terror with the advent of the nuke. And what's the difference between the nuclear bomb,
Mm-hmm.
the atom bomb, and an angry God that everybody believes in terms of its utility from the perspective of the elite? There is no difference. It's just a new God that they have.
100%.
And
Yep.
it makes
It is
them.
the ultimate power.
Yep, exactly.
And the power is really that of media, because they can tell us that a Barbie dollhouse getting blown up with a couple of sticks of dynamite is almighty, right? Like, that's ultimately
Oh,
the
yes.
equivocation of what they think that they can do. They can make you believe whatever they want you to believe. You can take from that belief of what you think that you saw, and you can extrapolate on that and make it a very big major thing. Or it's like, oh yeah, they just literally set a dollhouse on fire. So who gives a shit?
Yeah, I think they use miniatures. And you know what? Christopher Nolan in the movie Oppenheimer, and I haven't watched it yet, but they used miniatures instead of CGI because it would be more realistic. And so that begs the question, why don't they always do that? And here's why. Because
Well, yeah, he
they have
filmed it
dumbed.
the same way they filmed. Yeah,
They
it's like
did.
a soft disclosure of how, because he was like, no, I'm going to use the exact same camera, and then I'm going to film miniature sets the same way they did.
It sounded
And
like a
then it's
soft
like,
disclosure,
huh?
but what it reveals though is it reveals that they're purposefully dumbing down the imagery so that when they do a psyop, we think it's real. So this is my point: is that by keeping us dumbed down visually with a generation of bad special effects, they're going to bring in the really good effects for the next psyops, and we're not going to have any way of debunking it.
Well, that's actually what I was thinking about, the soft disclosure about the UFO, and how they were in front of Congress or whatever saying, all this UFO nonsense. And it's all stuff that we already knew, that's been out there on YouTube for 30 years. And then they're just like covering the very soft basis of that on, and whatever that was, that was a goofy thing. But I think that they really want to soft disclose some Richard Hoagland sort of information, to where, like, oh yeah, like, well, we had to give you the fake moon landing because, like, here's the high def real moon landings.
Yes.
Because we're in communion with these demons or whatever, these alien demons.
Yes, that was the theme in the movie
yeah.
Sputnik, where the aliens were hostile, made a deal with us. But this alien invasion narrative is just so tired and worn out. But they're doing this thing in the media to like disclose it. And I'm like, where's all the interest in it? Like, nobody cares anymore. And the main takeaway I got from the QAnoners, who I thought would have been all over it, they were like, oh, this is just to distract you from 4,000 nude pictures of Hunter Biden.
I am a QAnoner, by the way, so
Okay, now
No,
how deep are
none
you?
of
How deep are you in the Kool-Aid?
I would say that I am Q. His name my name is Negan. My name is Q Anon.
Is JFK Jr. still alive? That's my question for you.
No, no, his family is still alive. No, I know you always talk about that. No, there. That's the thing is, careful who you follow. And so there's a lot of people that have come and tried to make believe what is Q. Q is something very simple. Q is a Q clearance, very very easily looked up and researched. Um,
Okay. Do you
there's a
believe
lot of people
in
that may have.
devolution? Do you believe in devolution? Is Trump still president?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I believe in that for sure. Devolution, future proofs past. Look what we just saw. We just saw the Q dome of all time, the mag, the MAGA shot.
The mugshot, right? So in your take, that devolution basically means that America is being transferred from a corporation to a republic, and Trump's still in control, but they can't tell us yet because there'll be chaos. So Biden is just an
Mm-hmm.
actor fulfilling a role until they finish the whole project behind the scenes.
No, not fulfilling, not an actor fulfilling the role. Like no, he like people think he is literally and really the president still, and he by all accords of what Americans think a president is, he is the president. But like most of us will say, he's the resident. The supreme leader Kim Jong Biden is the resident in chief still.
Okay. Now, as far as the
It had to be this way.
now you said that there's purposeful disinformation, or it's been clouded up, so there's a fake Q. It's not about
It's
JFK.
not purposeful. It's not purposeful. It's that there is factions that some people wish evil and ill will towards other people. And so there's white hats and the black hats within the government.
Is there still like adrenochrome and child trafficking on a mass scale being
Oh
covered
yeah,
up?
yeah, of course. That's taking place and that's being covered up currently. So yeah. I
Interesting.
mean, there was out of Michigan alone, there was 1,000. What was it? And just in Michigan, I just saw this. 1,000 children from what is that? The child agency. They're
CPS.
just missing 1,000 of them. Yeah, 1,000 children just gone
I've
in
heard these
America.
stories before, but it's
It's a
like,
story, yeah. That's
but
why
I
I
mean, you look
wonder
into it
about it.
though,
Yeah,
and can you find, okay, there were 1,000 children in this satanic New
it seems
World Order
wild. It seems
daycare center.
crazy.
It sounds like propaganda.
It does. It does.
Like, our guys are fighting behind the scenes. We just rescued 5,000 kids, but the mainstream media won't talk about it because they're a bunch of child groomers. And there's no way to falsify it. And like, I've seen so many stories like, oh, the earthquakes in California was because the white hats were bombing the deep underground military bases where the children are. And it's always about these children, but they never
Ooh,
really surface.
that's a good one.
Is there any truth to Tim Ballard, or is he a shill?
There's obviously some truth to Tim Ballard. You know what I mean? Like, there's some truth to everything. Was it such an experience to where he was, the hero like they portrayed in the movie? Most likely not, right? But that's why it's like that's not really an argument at that point. It's like no, like there is such thing as embellishment, but is that actually happening in the world? And you wouldn't deny that it is.
Well, okay, I
you
wouldn't.
wouldn't say that
I
it
wouldn't
isn't.
deny that trafficking doesn't occur because I can look at examples of child brides.
Mhm.
There's
Because it happens.
institutionalized child
Yeah.
trafficking, but They're not interested in that.
Hmm.
They're interested in secret satanic rituals where they're drinking blood and praising Hillary Clinton. Like she's gonna, like she's this.
Well, people are interested in that. No, what people are interested. People bring that up all the time, but it just seems, it falls on deaf ears, and people are like, no, that's their culture.
Well, then
So
that's
no,
yeah,
I would
yeah,
say
that's
that
it.
no, people
They always
are
say that it's
precisely
their
talking
culture,
about.
it's their way, and I'm like, well, then I guess that's just Democrat culture. Just let them eat their babies.
It is. That is Democrat culture. That's what I always tell them. Like, no, you are in full adherence to a full on religion.
But wait, wait.
Like it's like,
It,
oh, I'm black, I
no, wait.
cannot be
Is it true
racist
though? Is it
because it's a
true?
system.
Is it true
No,
though that Hillary
you are
Clinton?
a religious zealot.
Look, you can't promote this Q stuff and say that
Hmm.
Hillary Clinton's not an adrenochrome user, and but going from there, how is she?
Well, to say that there was no Q drop that actually said like, oh, Hillary is a Q and on or is
A satanic vampire. Yeah,
is
she was
a
sacrificing chickens to Moloch.
adrenochrome injector.
Yep. She was sacrificing
There
chickens to
was a
Moloch.
lot of equivocations, a lot of
Frazzle
equivalences
drip,
brought forth,
frazzle drip.
but it was mostly, yeah. See, that would be all stuff extraneous to actually what was the Q drop, because a lot of people got excited. I attribute a lot of stuff to like just people getting excited. It's like, they like sort of jumped the gun a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I
And
call it fan fiction. Like one of my favorite accounts is QMum, and every few days she posts something up there like, today they executed Ellen DeGeneres. Good riddance. Go to hell, Ellen. And I'm like, what did Ellen do? And it's like, then
oh my
I looked at
god.
her feed and she's like, wait, Ellen got killed like 6 months ago. So they're just making up stuff all the time. It's just pure
Yeah, and then it
fantasy.
was Mandela affected like 6 months later. 6 months from now, it would be Mandela.
My
Like,
favorite one
no,
was,
we said that she died, but then actually, like, it was 6 months later that she died, and then 6 months later, we're gonna have a Mandela effect video about it. Like, it's
my favorite one
hilarious, dude.
from
I
QMum
love
was like,
Q shit.
oh no, they actually killed Hillary Rodham Clinton in 2018, but they've had a clone, but they just executed the clone. I'm like, what? What did the clone do in these last 3 years that warranted an execution at Gitmo?
Hey, they be doing strange things to clones. So, like that clone 3959, like that one was just lucky it survived up to that point.
I just like this whole thing where you can just choose your own reality these days, and it's like there's no argument against it if you're all playing on the same on the same sheet, right?
No,
You're on the same frame.
see, mine. No, I pick the objective reality. I'm like, no, the door I open is objective reality, and then I just want people to like define their term and to tell me what they're talking about precisely and concisely.
Well, I would like to know what we can treat as legitimate Q info and what is disinformation, fan fiction, and cultism and grift.
Yikes! That is an actual learned process. Like, I cannot help you become a better Q decipherer. All that I can say is that look at things as objective. The more that you accept the reality for the way that it presents itself, the better path that you're on. And that's all I can encourage and tell people. If they're confused or if they're upset about something,
Okay, let
just
me ask you a question
empower
about,
yourself.
is the QAnon shaman legit or is he a fed?
Oh, no. Yeah. Complete psyop. QAnon Shaman, everything that happened on J6 was completely up to the code for the plan. So, it was a bunch of clowns, which is the code word for CIA agents, dressed up.
Clowns? Yeah, I believe so. And
Yeah,
and
clowns. You know the old school clowns before 2015. When we said clowns, we knew we were talking about glowing feds,
yep. Well,
pretender clowns.
okay, now white hats. Do you know that the 33rd degree Masons are white hats?
Hmm.
Just saying. Like I kind of think that
Oh yeah, yeah,
the
absolutely.
I mean I don't have any faith in any of it. The whole Q thing. I think it's just too muddied to be of any use whatsoever. But from the very beginning,
Oh,
I
but it's
said
so clear.
I'm like it's hard to trust anonymous sources, and that's where I left it because the mainstream
Well,
media
that's
is
what
unaccountable.
it leaves it for you is because you could have been the one that started saying like, oh, the JFK Jr. is still alive, right? Like that was just for people. Like if I heard that, I was like, okay, well, obviously they haven't read the Q drop.
Well, do you know where that came from?
It becomes very
Do you know where
obvious
the
who
JFK?
is
Do you know where the
the
JFK Jr.
pro.
Do you know where that came from though? Do you know why that's a Q thing? Do you know why a bunch of? I mean, you say, "Oh, that's not a
I
belief."
do, yeah,
No, look, you
yeah, I
say that's
do.
not a belief, but you're only on the internet.
No, it's
The people who
mentioned.
are there,
No,
the
no,
people who are there at the rallies with giant
you're
flags
correct.
that say Trump, JFK Jr. You're saying, "Oh, they don't matter." I'm like, how can you, an outsider, say
No,
that the
they do
multitudes don't
matter.
matter? It's almost like a lot of these internet self-styled Christians say, "Oh no, they're not real Christians. The people who go to church are fake Christians. The only real Christian is me." Like, how can you say that that's not the real Q
They have
orthodoxy?
their job to fulfill, and they do it. They do their job. Their job is to say that what's his name, Mike Pence is a traitor. That is their job. That is what they do, and I'm not going to stop them from doing it because they're doing what's true. That's righteous.
Okay, well, how
That's
much
their
longer?
righteousness.
How much longer does
I
this
can know
plan go
more
on?
than
How much
them.
longer does this plan go
I
on?
can know more than
Hey,
them.
when is Q gonna drop the charade and say, "Hey, Trump's still in control, Nasara Gatsara, free money, etc." When does that happen?
It's not going to happen like that. So no, it won't.
Is the deep
I'm
state going to
wrong.
be
You're right.
defeated? Is the deep state going to be defeated like in the short term? Like, because the whole thing is there's supposed to be some broadcast in 10 days of darkness. We see the executions and the world changes. Isn't that what Q has been promising?
The broadcast has happened. People are heightened. People have memory. People do remember things. You know, haven't you seen? There's people coming coming to talk to you more now. They were coming to talk to you before.
Right.
Now the topic has changed. Now it's changed to like, what happened in those 3 years? Like, why was I told to put a mask on?
Well, look, here's
People
the
are
thing.
genuinely
When Q came
confused.
along, it turned a lot of people who are deconstructing fake news at the level that we are now into Trump followers
Hmm.
and believers in outer space and believers in shootings. Like, I think it's a step back insofar as it's a step back into the red pill, blue
Yeah,
pill.
I like that point that you brought up. Yeah, because at the time in 2018 when the QAnon came out, it was because of the Vegas shooter. And so we're calling out what a hoax the Vegas incident was.
They didn't call it a
And
hoax.
that's why.
Q didn't call it a hoax. Q
No,
said
yeah,
it was a
yeah,
deep state
absolutely did.
attack.
No, absolutely was that it was fake, and then it pointed and it gave us like, oh, here's the Saudi Arabia prince being escorted through the same hotel
No,
at
no, no.
the
They
same
didn't. They
time.
didn't say it was fake. He said it
That's
was a
what
false.
it. That's
He said it
what
was
the
a false flag.
QAnon came
He said it
out
was a false flag.
was
That's
to
not
say.
fake.
Yes, it was a false. Yeah, yeah.
False flag
It
is not
was.
fake.
Yeah,
In other words,
precisely.
no, people died.
No, he said it was a false flag.
People
No,
died.
he never. It was never. No, it was showing how fake everything was.
No, it was
How
people.
fake it all was.
It was
That's
people.
why
No,
I
it was a
started
deep
paying
state
attention
attack to make Trump
because
look
I was
bad.
following you, and then QAnon came out, and then here's a mainstream sort of thing that is done saying the same thing you are. So I was like, wow, I need to pay attention to this.
Q also was asked, what shape is the Earth? Is it flat? And Q said no.
I mean, that's a shape question. Shape. I
Right, but I
mean,
mean, look. If you're
topographically,
trying to get rid of the deep state and big
and
bloated government,
you have
and
to
NASA's
see
getting $50 billion a year, and there's a question that could.
but he never came out and said that Earth is a globe, or a lot of people do think like, oh no, Q actually said like we have to respect the moon landing and stuff, but no, that wasn't actually the situation, or that wasn't actually the conversation. He was
Space
like, no, yeah,
Force,
respect
Starlink
it.
satellites,
He
all
said
kinds of things
respect
referenced by
it.
Q that rely on the existence of outer space. And then you get into
And
other.
I'm telling you, it has no existence of extraneous to flat Earth. Like space is volume. It's very easy. Like everything is space. So that's what I appreciate when he did the Space Force. That was to separate what is applicably done in reality away from NASA. So it actually took credence from NASA by saying, "Oh, here's the Space Force, which is just all telecommunication, which is just done through undersea cables." So the space is just simply internet at that point, and it is relinquished all of the diatribe that is associated with NASA. So yeah, now we don't have to talk about NASA. We can talk about the Space Force.
Okay, another question for you then.
And
How
what is
come how
space?
come Q hasn't brought up the fact that Ashley Babbitt's not dead? How come Q hasn't said January 6th was a
Well, Q hasn't done any more drops um since 2020. I think
no
his last drop was.
no there was a
His
few other drops
last
since.
drop was.
There was a couple of other ones last summer, but one of them was actually attributed to like Ron Watkins or something. But as far as confirmed Q
Yeah,
drops, I don't
yeah,
know. Now,
yeah.
final question for you. Do you have any
Confirmed.
suspicions on who Q is? Do you think it's a military person, a New Zealand actor? Any idea?
Oh yeah, no. Trump told us who Q was. Trump is Q plus, and his team. There's a picture, you can go look it up. A team in his White House, an official photograph. That's Team Q. It's an official team. It's his. Q is simply just Trump's um, wing of propaganda, right?
That's kind of what I understood. Q was how Trump was reaching
Yeah,
out to the grassroots conspiracy theorists. So your take on it then is that
because
Q
fake
Trump is
news.
Trump
Yeah,
is
because
Q
fake news.
plus
He had to have.
plus?
Hmm. Yeah, because we had fake news, and like imagine like a president is, and he can't communicate with his base because the information won't get deciphered or transferred through the news media. So here is, I'm going to target these autistic people, and I'm going to give them specific information that they themselves can do with what they want. And so that's the Q clearance. That's the Q drop. It's a simple, like, this is Trump's propaganda per se. So you're completely right in saying, yeah, it's propaganda. But it's like, it is important to understand that is Q and on is directly Trump's propaganda. It isn't like somebody made something up or whatever,
See, I see.
kind of all the other straw mans you sort of make
Well,
for
look, no.
it.
The
But
thing is,
no, like,
I'm not making up straw men. I'm going from the horse's mouth. Right now. There's a big meeting, a Great
I
Awakening
agree.
meeting right now. There's a big painting of Trump, and there's a lightning bolt Q behind his head. General Flynn is speaking, and others are speaking. Eric Trump is there.
Mm,
I'm not
hmm
straw manning it when they're out there promoting this war on the deep state Q narrative. Like they are promoting all of the most cultish aspects to it. General Flynn and otherwise. And my
A
take
lot
on
of
it,
them are.
and this is observable, the QAnon movement is templated in many ways off of radical Islamic terrorism. And it's a domestic violent extremist group against the great Satan, only they call it the deep state. No different. And then when we
But
dig
you
deep
know,
enough, you
but
dig deep enough in far right politics, and you got Israel in the picture, just like you have Great Satan, Little Satan, America, Israel. I just think it's a templated, manufactured, domestic violent extremist ideology.
but you just conceded that yeah, the Islamicism is an actual framework that was taken from the ethos of the Catholics.
Well, yeah, but I would also say this, though, that radical Islamic terrorism that we experienced was fake and that it was also a construct. And I think that they just templated it so that the QAnon movement is just kind of a way to broad brush an entire spectrum of the U.S. population, traditionalists in particular. And I think that the Q movement is an attack on any last vestiges of nationalism or conservatism.
I would agree as a broad brush of Americanism, but I would not associate MAGAism as being the same that is American conservatism.
Well, what does
I
MAGA
wouldn't
mean?
do
MAGA
that.
means make America great again, meaning like what? Like it was in the past. And conservatism
Yeah,
is about
yeah,
resisting
no problem with that.
progressivism, and so it's traditionalism. MAGA is about a traditional view. It is specifically about traditionalism and trad life off the grid, away from the cities. Everything espoused by the right wing media right now is all about this, and it's just a rejection of progressivism. That's why it's Great Awakening versus the Great Reset. One is looking forward, one is looking
Hmm.
back. And I'm just saying that they're the domestic equivalent of this reactionary, anti progressive, anti West, anti feminist uh, perspective. And they've just imported it here. And I can see it in the alt right. It's totally manufactured. And it's not specifically only about Q, but it is really about the right in general. And I think that Q is just kind of like the I don't know what you want to call it these days. I mean, it's become sort of a catch-all
Yeah,
phrase.
see, I would
You can't
call
monolith it.
see,
You can't say they all believe this. Apparently,
I would call Q the conservative, progressive idea, right? So we're
you don't think?
now
Do
like,
you agree with me that it's a cult?
oh, absolutely not, absolutely not. No, me appreciating that Trump says some clever things, doesn't make me in a cult.
But if you're under the impression that Trump is secretly the president working with a secret army, getting rid of secret enemies in Guantanamo at secret tribunals, and that you're in on it, no one else is, then there's an element there, maybe not a cult, but it's definitely a
Mm.
subversive movement, but not in a bad way. It's subversive against the bad guys, but it's still a movement.
Yeah, the element of me having more of a comprehension than somebody else it would be a narcissistic endeavor, and that's not what it is. Like, because no, that was incorrect. He's not currently the president, so that assessment, I guess, of that understanding of what devolution is would then result in you either believe in law or you disbelieve in maritime law and military law specifically. And I think that just brings more questions. I wouldn't say that that places you in a cult like system. That's you conceded it yourself. Like, this is a maritime statutory law that we seem to be in.
Well, when I say
So you've
cult,
actually
look, when I say cult, what I
you've
basically
act,
mean, like,
you're
okay,
in the
look,
cult.
yeah, it's a subculture. I mean, it's just, I'm not just playing with words, it's a subculture. And in the Q subculture, the belief is that there is this evil underground government that has global control and they're vampires for all intents and purposes, and that Trump has been an insider long enough to have rubbed shoulders with all of these bad people, and he is going to work on behalf of the common man to take them down, but that requires the military. So the patriots within the
Sounds good.
military have teamed up with Trump and Q to take control, and the public is just being amused with a puppet show while Trump fixes the machinery from within. And then when he returns, America is going to be a republic again, and we're all going to have our bank accounts filled up with money that the deep state was taking from us.
I like your story. No, yeah, I find nothing wrong with that.
That's how it's
What
been
you
explained to
just
me.
said sounds very good.
That is exactly how I heard it from
That
Eddie
what you
Bravo
sound
and
is
others.
good.
Hey,
That sounds good to me.
hey, someone in the comment section, Oswaldo says, "How did you find Infinite Plane Radio?"
I I don't know. I found you looking at Dome Wars
Okay, cool.
in 2016. Like, yeah, I've been contributing to IPS for many years. You know, Tim, as what we would refer to him, he's a great representative for precisely what we're talking about here. So I'm not in opposition. I'm just inciting thought and
Yeah.
and having a discussion here.
Well, I'm glad you clarified because it is not true that everybody in the Q group is waiting for JFK to come back from the clouds and in the clouds and like, throw money down and the whole story, the salvation story with this like Kennedy as Christ. That's ridiculous, obviously. But I'm trying to figure out
Yeah,
where is the
it's hilarious. I think it's funny though.
a
Like
lot of it is funny.
I don't. I'm not even mad. I'm not even mad at like my fellow QAnon participants. Like and some of the goofy stuff that they do.
No,
Like I'm not even mad.
my favorite
I
thing so
love it.
far is Negative 48 or Vincent Fuchsia. Vincent Fuchsia is
Yeah.
like this 5'4" kind of swarthy guy, and they're like, "Yeah, that's JFK Jr. in disguise." I'm like, I don't know how they arrived at that. And then you have
Well,
Negative
well
48, who just the least likely.
negative 48 is is the belief that the the Constitution, the old Constitution is done away with, and we have a new Constitution, and since we did away with our capitalist government, now our Constitution, and so Trump will be the first president of the new republic.
Yes, and that would make, or he'd be the
That
19th
yeah.
because they're starting. Yeah, that was the whole idea.
Yeah. 19 number one or whatever. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about.
Well, this is all very
I
interesting.
love it. It's hilarious.
This is spun into some wild directions. There's a ton of conjecture right now hypothesizing that Trump is the Antichrist and that this is a great deception going on right now and that he is going to somehow be involved in, I don't know what, going to war with the aliens who are actually God's um, armies. I'm not quite sure yet, but yeah, there's a lot of people who are expecting that Trump is actually deceiving people and that the Q are just like his fanatics.
Well, yeah, they're setting the stage, right, for alien disclosure. And so by the time now, people are going to be wanting to ask Trump, what did you say to the aliens? What did you say to? He
Yeah.
says, I built a wall.
Wait a minute. That's just like Trackdown. From 1958, there was a show called Trackdown, and the episode End of the World was about a con man named Trump who built a wall to defend the village, or he promised to build him a wall to defend the village against a cosmic threat. That's from 1958.
Wow. Future proves past. Future will inevitably prove past.
Well,
Yeah.
that's one of the Q axioms. Future proves the past. Interesting. Not quite sure what it means, although I do tend to think that predictive
Me neither.
programming, being what it is a predictive model.
I agree. That was beautiful. How how crazy. There's a movie in that. That is their premise: is that Trump is going to prove the past.
Okay, like this is interesting.
Beautiful,
This is actually
beautifully written.
one of the things that I hear from
This is
Q
Mandela effect.
people is it will be biblical, right? They keep saying it will be biblical. And I'm of the opinion that the construction of the Bible is wrapped around a psyop. And I agree with the findings of
Uh
Joseph
huh.
Atwill and Caesar's Messiah that what you saw was Titus Flavius fulfilling prophecy, which proved that that this was the Messiah. It was all about proving prophecy, fulfilling prophecy. And how easy would it be for Trump to fulfill prophecy if what we're talking about in prophecy is just predictive programming? Like they write the news. How hard would it be for them to fulfill any prophecy? And they can make anything out of the Bible come true, just as they can make anything from their fake science come true. Like even now, the public is convinced that Maui is the result of, quote, climate change. It's super easy for them to ascribe any
Well,
cause
that
they
is,
want.
yeah, that's what they're doing, Tim. Trump is Gadriel, and so we were fulfilling prophecy because they wrote it, or they're actively trying to fulfill prophecy because somebody wrote it.
Well, we can't all
So
be right.
people want to bring people back, all the Jews back to Israel, so that they can fulfill prophecy. Yeah, like, yes, what you said is correct. Like, there's prophecies that people have in this world, and they attest to them,
I'm just
and
saying
they
we
live their
look, we
whole
can't all be
lives
right.
by them.
Trump can't be a savior saving America from the deep state and the antichrist, right? He has to be one or the other, or because like there are so many different stories and
No, they concede that no, they create the prophecy. The Illuminati, right? Who we talked about
but I'm trying to
before.
be
Are they
specific
good
here
or are they bad?
because Trump is central to this Q narrative. You're the only Q believer we have here to speak to. And I'm just
Mm.
saying, is there any possibility in your mind that this deep state narrative is a psyop to present Trump as a savior?
Oh, yes, it 100% is a psyop. Yeah, and just as Trump will attest that no, he isn't the end be all end all savior, right? Because he is saying no, Jesus Christ is a savior. That's what he puts to public.
Well, Jim
I don't know if
Caviezel
that's
from Sound of
what he
Freedom,
really believes.
yeah, Trump has been promoted to Moses, which is kind of ominous if you think about it,
Mm.
because
No, I
Moses,
heard. Yeah,
yeah,
I
he
heard that.
dies. He doesn't get to see his Maga. He doesn't see his promised land.
Yeah, no, he would be the Moses figure here in this situation. But the situation is that there are people giving money and to this position that would be had that all Israelites, all Israelis, or all Jews need to return to Israel for there to be the fulfillment for the scripture, right? So
Well,
you can write your own
yeah,
script
hey, this has
and
been
fulfill
great,
your
but
own
look,
scripture.
I want to move on to the other topics we had tonight. I'm glad that you were able to offer some clarification that not everybody in Q is drinking the same Kool-Aid. Lots of different flavors, different perspectives on
Yeah,
it.
many different flavors. Good, yeah. I'll take that. Because I'll talk to you about whatever you have on the docket. But yeah, thank you for talking to me for a minute about that. And
Yeah, well, look, whatever it
it
is, this is the thing. People say,
always
why would you talk about it? A lot of people just tune it out, and I'm like, you can't not talk about one of the biggest stories of all time within the bigger story. This Q thing isn't small whatsoever, and it's going to come to a resolution sooner or later. And I see a resolution kind of imminent, so I'm kind of like fascinated to see where this goes, especially now that part of the prophecy has been fulfilled. Q drop 55. The first indictment will shock the world. Trump gets arrested. There's something up with this. There is a story here, and it was Stormy Daniels that got him brought in on the first arraignment. The storm is coming, so you can find support, generally speaking, for this meta narrative, this story that's been following Trump since he entered politics and before. But
Precisely, Tim. Good. Thank you very much. Good talking to you.
yeah,
Always,
definitely, and
always a pleasure.
yeah, call back anytime. Have a great evening. All right, we have had a couple of interesting calls this evening. We had Harmon, who has been witnessing UFOs, falsely identified by some of the witnesses as CubeSats. And just now we had a brief conversation about Q and what it is or isn't. All right, let's see here. Continuing. Yesterday, after that Jacksonville shooting happened, I said, watch. And actually, this is a timestamp, 12:21 a.m. I said, watch. The right will blame mental illness. The left will blame racism, guns, and social media. And look what happened. David Hogg says, it's insane to me that a mass shooter has been reported to have had swastikas on his rifle, a manifesto of how much he hates black people, and the media still blames it on mental illness. It's just predictable. Mental illness? Like, what mental illness is it that makes you pick up a gun and go shoot people? Like, that's not a quote mental illness. That's a behavior. But they have this way of bifurcating the response to every single psyop. I can predict it. I can tell you. You just name a pundit and I'll tell you their opinion. They'll say it. It's gun culture. It's racism. No, it's guns and toxic masculinity, or it's mental illness. They all fight over the causes, but you know what they don't say? Not one of them will say, oh, it's fake. None of them will say it's fake. That's how you can tell who shills are. Like, shills think that fake dead kids' lives matter. Do you remember when Alex Stein went over to Uvalde and he cried? He literally cried buckets of tears in front of that city council. He was weeping and crying because nobody went in to save the children. And I said to him on Twitter, hey, fake dead kids' lives don't matter. Don't you know this? He blocked me because he's in on the PSYOP entertainment complex. It's all about building up martyrs. And they don't care if they're on the right. They really generally don't care about kids who were killed by AR-15s. They're more about the ones who are killed by vaccines, Democrat blood drinkers, and direct energy weapons. Violet says, hey caller, hang around here instead of more anons. I got the impression the caller was more IPS than Q. And just because the mainstream or the main tenets of Q are pretty much the only things he stood by. The whole thing about the deep state war. A lot of the stuff that's been added on to it, like the JFK stuff, I don't know. I don't know who's behind all that 100%, but I think it all stems from the same group of people. And it's all government, though. It's government. It's not grassroots. See, they know that you don't believe big media, so they got to give you grassroots figures. And Q is just sort of a grassroots organizing thing. And I also want to point out one quick thing here. There's this tendency in the media to categorize conspiracy theories as a right-wing phenomenon. Oh, people who don't believe the news are conspiracy theorists. Well, that's kind of a loaded proposition because it assumes that the mainstream media isn't built on conspiracy theory, which it is. Mainstream media is 100% built on conspiracy, conjecture, and lies, and we can prove this. We prove it all the time. Going through some comments. Elephant Tusk says it's very confusing because Satan is a title but relates to Saturn as well. Yeah, you find a lot of syncretism, which is the conflating of different deities and gods. And as we move into this new paradigm, we've seen the emergence of the new goddess brought out by Aleister Crowley, this Whore of Babylon, as a replacement for the previous version, new iterations. And yeah, Satan is not the same as Saturn. However, there are different myths that are all based on the same astrotheological stories and templates. And so you could fit them in here in the sense that you have the ruler of darkness versus the ruler of light. Different ways to explain it is Set is the prince of darkness who kills the sun every day at sunset. You can see it in movies like Terminator 2, where the Terminator represents Saturn or Satan, and he's time traveling. Saturn's a god of time. He's time traveling to stop the Savior, JC, John Connor, Jesus Christ. Terminator is a reference to the Terminator line, where the sun sets, separating day from night is the Terminator line. When the sun dies, Terminator comes to kill the sun. This story is told in all the different movies in many different ways, but the whole thing is you have the light and the dark personified. The light representing good, like Luke Skywalker, and dark, evil. Just very basic templates. A really good place to see this is in Star Wars, where you have Darth Vader, Dark Father, skull visage. He's got a skull face, looks like the god of death. And he chops the sword hand off of Luke. Luke means, light. Luke Skywalker, the sun walks across the sky. Losing his sword hand, that's the cutting of the phallus off of Osiris, who is then resurrected. They reattach it. Well, what happens to Luke after his sword hand, his lightsaber hand, gets chopped off? He hangs from a cross in Cloud City before he's picked up, rescued, and they reattach it. So you have this story between light and dark, death, temporary resurrection, and the cross is a reference to astrology. You're talking about astronomy, astrology, you're talking about the night sky, the Southern Cross where the sun stops on the solstice. We saw a more recent example of this type of astrotheological theater played out on the world stage when we entered Cancer, when we hit the summer solstice. And solstice means sun stands still, hangs on a cross. Luke hanging on the cross, the suspension. But on the summer solstice, which is symbolized by Cancer or the crab, we had the submersible Titan, where for a few days, 96 hours, they said they had air, but for those 3 days when the sun was standing still, we were all standing still, more or less, focused on this crab representative, this submersible. Rituals in plain sight. They even made it a point, I think, to put a father and a son on it. Elephant Tusk says, have you ever watched the scene in The Matrix with the architect watching all the television screens? What is happening on a much, much higher realm? All of reality flows through that room. Yeah, the great architect of the universe is what the Freemasons call it. But the architect in The Matrix who explains how many iterations of the Matrix he's been through. Interesting point in the film where he meets this. It's one of these scenes that I think tells the big story. It's very telling, in fact, too, about the screen. And the word screen, it's like someone yesterday brought up altar. They said, use an altar to alter reality, two different spellings. But it's the phonetic similarity that seems to, add meaning to it. And our reality is screened through your little iPhone screen. And what they're doing is they're screening it out for any ideas that are dissonant or incongruent with their big picture. The way I understand it is, and it's not about shape at all for me, I could care less for the most part, it's really about worldview. And they give you a completed puzzle, and all the pieces are there. So you get these extra pieces, and they don't fit. And they say, well, those pieces are obviously to be burned, not to be considered. Just throw them out there beyond. So they construct this, false worldview, and it's through their screen and their screen only. Well, Neo is the nonconformist. He's like the NPC that breaks his programming. And because of that, he's considered to be, quote, the virus. And right now, they're in the process of screening out all the neos from this media matrix. They don't want you pulling people out of Plato's cave. I also find it fascinating, too, how it's the age of information, the information age, this deluge, and it's been compared as a historical analog to the Reformation, movable type press. Suddenly, a lot of people can gather information that's not going strictly through their screened reality, through their priesthood. Because the screen is just the filter that the priesthood, the establishment, puts on your mind. Well, if you're getting information from outside the church, outside the media, that's a problem. And that's what we've had going on right now with the internet. It's like a new Reformation. And just as the Reformation had its immune system response to fight up against, they're trying to reform. Meanwhile, the church is directly confronting it. I think right now we're seeing the immune system of the beast matrix with their information warriors that they're putting out there to fight conspiracy theories. But what I'm pointing out here is that this is a neo-reformation. And neos in the matrix are the ones who are saying, hey, you can directly figure out stuff for yourself without going through their screen, without going through their priest's approved frame of reference. And they're like, well, no, you can't. And the censorship is something that we've dealt with this entire time. And to me, I don't even have an issue with it. It doesn't stop us. It never has. But it just shows that, we are quite literally against a worldview monopoly. They're trying to monopolize reality itself and our perceptions of it. Going through some comments. Psy Obstacle says, there is more land, more resources, more free wealth. Creates scarcity is their game on us. Exactly. Scarcity. That's the main thing. Oh, next thing is we're running out of air. Oh no, you know what? We got to rate limit you on how many breaths you can take. Got to rate limit you on how many steps you can take, how many miles you can travel, how many tweets you can read. Look, it started with tweets. And everyone's like, oh, I don't care. You can rate limit me. I'm not going to use 6,000 tweets. But once you accept the premise, you make the deal, then they can start shrinking down the universe of ideas. And it's happening now. But I'm fine with it. I'm like, you know what? Let's just step outside of their universe because it's fake anyway. It's a fictional universe. Elephant Tusk says every breath you take will be itemized. Yeah, it's pretty much there. We're almost there. Every thought you think, every meme you post. And they will be finding ways. They already tax the air that you breathe. But it's all based on the assumption that we're running out. And it's fascinating, too, how on the left they say there's too many people, not enough space. We have to reduce the population somehow, or we have to minimize our impact. So for them, there's too much. Oh, there's too much private property. There's too much wealth. But then what does the right say? They're trying to take all our wealth. We're running out of people. They both agree there's a population crisis. Do you? They say there's a population crisis. Oh yeah, there is. There's too many people. Then Musk says, no, there's not enough people. We're running out. So which is it? Are we running out or is there too many people? Maybe there's not a crisis. But if it was a real crisis, it wouldn't have a bifurcated interpretation. It wouldn't be perfectly split down the middle like everything else. I talk about this thing as the lie world order, and I think it's fascinating to look at the power of the lie itself. And this is something that I've been putting a lot of thought into, just the power of lies, manipulation, what you could term lesser magic, but how you have the concept of reality being spoken into existence by God, the author of it all. It's just a void, it's black, darkness, let there be light. And you speak it into existence. Reality is as described. Then you have the father of lies, the devil, forked tongue, who has the imitation, who spellbinds people, who uses the power of the lie to create a simulation, an augmentation. Like, I think the world stage is like the the devil's interpretation of creation. Like we're using the devil's operating system. And that the bifurcated tongue, the forked tongue, perfectly describes this reality and its interpretation, how it's perfectly split down the middle. Oh, this is like another example. Like we just had a shooting. Oh, those people over there are going to say, oh, it's caused by racism and gun culture. Those guys will say it's caused by antidepressant drugs. And everybody gets filtered according to their bias. And that's because everybody's moving forward. You don't have a choice. Like you're on the freeway and the road divides. You're going to go left or right. You can't hit the median, you die. But what we're doing here is we're saying, actually, there is a third option. It's called hit the brakes. It's called don't take either path. It's called suspend judgment until you get more facts. And the very first skeptics, when you go back into the history of skepticism, the philosophy of skepticism was originally typified by the word epike, which means suspension of judgment. And one more point about the DO weapons, because some people say that Maui was hit by direct energy weapons, or maybe it was climate change, but they think people died. And I'm like, we can't really assume that yet. But one other point to consider is just because you don't know how the PSYOP was done doesn't mean you have to default to the official explanation. If you can't immediately debunk it, you don't have to choose left or right lane. You can just stop and wait. Angle of Elevation says, in the movie The Fifth Element, all the air was polluted, so they had to keep building up. There you go. The air was polluted. And now they've introduced space junk, space environmentalism. Nobody cares about whales anymore. Now it's all about space environmentalism. Why is that? It's because it's just a metaphor for the mind space. They need to clean the mind space, get rid of mind viruses, mind junk, space junk. It's all kind of the same thing. They've made these fascinating correlations, and it's part of their storytelling, and it's all, again, part of this, what I call the meta script. But NASA's up there in space getting vaccinated in the summer of 2020. They called it celestial immunity. And while they're getting vaccinated, a piece of space junk punctures the arm of the space station, its camera arm, right above its elbow. So it was like the space station got vaccinated. But what it brings up is this problem of space junk. And I'm saying that space junk is a construct to correlate to unregulated, censorable, destructive memes that they have to purge from the internet. Mind space junk. Again, this is why I say Musk is the leading purveyor of mind and space junk. He's there to set a bad example. Look at all the junk he's put up in space. He's interfered with Ukraine, Russia, and that's a problem. Look at Bezos. Wants to go out there and mine asteroids and become a trillionaire and disrupt our world's economies. Can't do that. Can't let the space cowboys go into space unregulated. So they are setting bad examples for us all to see. As above, so below, as they say. All right, going through your comments. IPS should sell beaks if the masks return, says Angst G. You know, before 2020, we had actually put some beaks on bandanas. Not really sure why, other than we were just, just the idea of, the beak bandana. And yeah, I could see that working. Look, everyone's saying, I'm not going to comply, don't comply, get ready to not comply. And I understand that. But now that we know that this non-compliance is going to be hijacked by the political right wing, I don't want to comply with the non-compliance. Because non-complying is, in this case, going to be an act of compliance. I know it sounds paradoxical. So how do you non-comply in this instance? Very interesting, right? It's like, well, do you take the left lane or the right lane? Do you protest lockdowns or do you lock down? Well, we do the third option, and our option is we don't lock down because we have press passes. But as far as the whole thing is, it's like it's a no-win situation. That movie War Games says it best. Strange game. The only winning move is not to play. But you can't play. I mean, you can't opt out of not playing. As far as I know, as far as we've seen, it's like that's what they showed us in 2020. Like, oh, you think you see through the matrix? Well, you think you see through the fake news? It's coming to you, and belief in it will be enforced by your friends, your neighbors, and your local Karens. And that's pretty much what we saw. Angle of Elevation says sequels are never as good as the original. Not expecting as much. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be anything to really get a rise out of me this time around. Now, as far as the press passes, I have to make some new ones. So I'll make some new ones tonight. I'll design them. Put my notes here, and I'll put them directly onto the eBay store. All right, so this has been great. Thanks to the callers. We had a very informative call from a person who's very informed about Q, who did properly call me out for my straw manification of the subject. Not that I'm like doing any harm by straw manning it, but I think people need to be able to take ownership of what they're actually promoting and what they claim to believe. And there are a lot of people who do indeed stand by that. Like, for example, this is not OpQ on Twitter saying release the Kennedy files. And here they have JFK Sr. JFK Sr., 103 years old, and here he is hanging out with Donald Trump. Now, he's going under an alias, but here you have JFK hanging out with Donald Trump. And a lot of QAnoners believe this stuff, but it's not all of them. And then it gets even weirder. JFK Jr. and Carolyn actually had a bunch of kids that we didn't know about, and one of them was Trump's White House press secretary. Yep. Kaylee is a Kennedy. So they've created their own little fan fiction. It kind of reminds me of the royal family. And then they have RFK, who's weirdly enough running as a Democrat, hanging out with JFK Jr. wearing a Guy Fawkes mask. And a lot of them asked, hey, RFK Jr., is JFK Jr. alive? If so, touch your nose. And guess what he did? He touched his nose. RFK Jr.'s dad died at the age of 42. He was assassinated by Saran in 1968. RFK Jr. lost his voice at the age of 42. Nothing to see there, just pointing out it's kind of an interesting coincidence. It's also interesting to point out that the photographer, Richard Drew from the AP, who photographed the death of RFK, was in New York on 9/11 and photographed the falling man. You know the falling man photo? Looks like the hanged man, the falling man from 9/11? Yeah, the photographer photographed RFK as he fell to his death. So those are two photos of historic import photographed by the same guy. Two people falling to their deaths. Interesting. I'm curious as to what the age is of the guy that fell off the building. But again, RFK Jr. lost his voice at 42. His dad dies at 42. What's going on? Falling man. Falling very much associated with the number 42 if you follow the scripting here. But I think it's all just so convoluted and nonsensical. It's always nice to have people call in and shed some light. Jake the A-hole says it would make sense that Trump comes back in the next election. A lot of talk about another lockdown too. It would make sense to have Trump be in charge if they bring it back. Yep. Oh, by the way, Jake the A-hole, a fakeologist wants you as a guest. And also, and I can't be specific about it, but if you call me when I'm offline or you email me, I'll be specific with you. There's a documentary crew from a newspaper company, a newspaper agency in Europe, big media company. They're doing a documentary on conspiracy theories. And they asked me if I know anybody that I can refer them to in California, Nevada, or Arizona that they can meet in person in the next few days because they're traveling this way. And I'm thinking, well, who do I know that can speak on these topics? And I think, well, you have a lot of information on sports fakery and space fakery, I'm sure. But anyway, if you want to be a part of this, and I recommend it, my email address is timosman007@gmail or infiniteplanesociety@gmail.com. And if you want to be on Fakeologist, I will forward your information to him. All right, this has been great. We've had a couple of different conversations today. We had Fakeologist on. Before that, we were live for a little while here. And now we just jump back on for a couple more hours. I have to take off for now, but we'll be back tomorrow or the next day. We'll be on with Woo's News. No, the documentary, I'll talk to you about it in person on the phone. There's a reason why I don't want to give away too much, because I have too many enemies and trolls, and I don't want anybody contacting these individuals. But it's probably something you might want to look into. But anyway, my point is, they specifically asked me to try to find one or two other people who are as versed in these topics as I am, people who have been following these topics. They're looking for interview subjects. All right, this is Space is Fake.
Into the black
Chief Crow and the Flat Earth Worms stating the obvious.
As you can see the stars.
Oh yeah.
You know,
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon.
It's not black and white. I mean, it's black, but there's all kinds of polka dots.
Space is fake AF. Space is fake AF.
There's more than stars. You can see planets. You can see moons.
you see the gas.
Dump it, said the sky was not the limit. He fly to the moon in another second, but we haven't been back since 1972. Destroyed all the papers and blew up the Challenger crew, except for the twinsies. Space is fake AF. Space is fake AF.
Look out into deep space away from the sun. It's the darkest black you can imagine.
Hey, space boy, you broke my rocket man heart. Where are the stars? Is it bright or is it dark? The vacuum of space, oh, the tomfoolery.
What happens if you get a leak on that? You have a leak.
Deep under my bubble.
It's hard to comprehend.
Space is fake AF.
Two little bitty O-rings.
Space is fake AF.
It's not what you think, homeboy.
Space is fake AF.
It's all just start doing this.
Space is fake AF.
Research Eddie Bravo. You just have a leak, and what you would do is lose air.